What I wanted to talk about is a bit of history about how we got to where we are. I think most of us agree that Nigeria is in a bad shape. The extent of the badness of the shape depends on who you're talking to, but we all agree that we are not where we're supposed to be. And for too long, we've been called a country of potential. And I am about the age of Nigeria, and this is why I took a decision in December to not to shave my beard. I want to start looking my age. And this happened because a 25-year-old girl propositioned me on WhatsApp. And when I complained that I was 54, she said, she wrote two things. Age is just a number, and you don't look your age. I don't know whether I can do anything about age being a number or not a number. Trust me, when you are my age, you will know age is not a number, it's a reality. But I thought that if I looked a little older by allowing my hair to grow and the gray comes out, perhaps this young lady will realize I'm old enough to be her grandfather if I had married at 16, you know? Anyway, so I want to take a bit of time to talk about a Nigeria of our dreams. And Chidi has told you to dream big. And you must. You must dream big. But behind your dreams, you must have the focus, you must educate yourself and work hard to achieve your dreams. It's not good enough to dream big. Mandela dreamt big, but he paid for it. He educated himself, he maintained his integrity, he knew what was important and focused on that, both the little things as well as the big things, and spent 27 years in prison in defense of a principle. Now, how many of us are ready to do that? So I want to take you back a little. For those that have read history, this may be boring, but for those that have not, a little bit of history about why we are where we are. Why are we here? What went wrong? And what can we do to get out of it? And this is your responsibility. I am living on borrowed time. In a country with a life expectancy of 48, I'm already 6 years over. So whatever is going to happen to Nigeria, people of my generation can only begin to lift Nigeria out of the ditch it is in now. The work of transforming Nigeria will be yours. And I'm sure today, the three of us will try to challenge you to take that responsibility and run with it. I will talk about this history. I will talk about why we are where we are. And then spend some time to talk about nations and nation building. Because Nigeria will be 100 years old this year. And many people are even asking the question whether we should remain united. It's a very important year. A lot of discussion and debate will take place this year about Nigeria and the future. But how did other nations develop? How did they leave us behind? I had wanted 3 slides to be put on this, but I didn't send the slides early enough, so I will try to talk over them. But let me begin with a little history. In 1960, Ghana was richer than Singapore. Today, Ghana is about the same as well, in terms of gross national income as Nigeria, but Singapore is a rich country. Per capita incomes of over $30,000. But 50 years ago in 1960, Ghana was richer than Singapore. The same thing with Nigeria and Malaysia. About the same size country then, but were about the same. Today, Malaysia exports cooking oil to Nigeria. In the 60s, they did not have any palm oil plantation. They came to Nigeria, according to some stories, to get the seedlings. I'm not sure whether that is true or not. But today, most of the oil we use in our homes, Turkey, comes from Malaysia. One of the biggest successes of the 20th century and 21st century is China. Up until 1980, some of the poorest countries in Africa, like Burundi, Rwanda, and Malawi, that are still very poor countries in Africa today. Up to 1980, they were richer than China. But from 1978, Deng Xiaoping started a true economic transformation of his country, and today China is set to overtake the US as the largest economy by the year 2040. The initial predictions were that China would overtake the US in 2050, but they are going to do it now in 2040. And how did they do it? Where did we go wrong? Why did we go wrong? Today, Nigeria is characterized by 3 I's: impunity, injustice, and insecurity. It was not like that when we were growing up, for those of us that are old enough. And many of you, or young people of your generation, would blame us. Because on Facebook, I get abused all the time by young people who say, "What did you do when you were in office? Is it today that you've discovered Nigeria has gone bad?" And so on and so forth. You are an angry generation, and maybe you have a right to be. But anger alone doesn't solve the problem. It is constructive thinking and solutions that will solve the problem. Because you can be as angry with me as you like, but in 20 years I'll be dead. Okay? So you have to find someone to be angry about, and then you'll be 40-something. And then your children will be angry at you if you don't solve the problem. So I would like us to try to understand why we are where we are and stop the blame game. There is enough blame to go around. Okay? Every Nigerian can claim to be marginalized. Every Nigerian can find a reason to blame the next person, but it doesn't solve the problem. The countries that have made progress did so by coming together, looking at the problems, and finding constructive solutions. Okay? I think we got here, this is my opinion. I'm sure Obi and Chidi may have different perspectives, and you should all take them together. But in my opinion, we are where we are because of a series of failures of leadership. The first mistake of our founding fathers, in my opinion, is that they did not build a nation. They did not even try. They just replaced the British colonialists without changing the structure that they inherited. And I'll give just one example. Okay? Yeah. I'll give just one example. Okay? When Nigeria was under colonial rule, a few Scotsmen and Englishmen were sent to run the country. Okay? They come to Nigeria for short-term duties as district officers, permanent secretaries, blah, 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 governors, governor general, and so on. So what do they need? They need a big house in the GRA with 2 bedrooms, paid for by the government, with servants, cooks, and so on, because they knew that they would be going back to England. So there was no mortgage system in Nigeria. They had mortgage systems in England. They bought their little flats in England to go back to. But they had these huge houses in Ikoyi and Enugu GRA and Kaduna GRA here in Nigeria. which were paid for by the government. The electricity was paid for by the government. The water was paid for by the government. The houses were free. Why? Because Nigeria was not intended to be their permanent home. The permanent home was the United Kingdom. And in the UK, they had a functioning mortgage system in which anyone with a job can borrow, buy a house, and pay over 25 years. So the British colonialists never established a mortgage system in Nigeria. And even when Nigerians began to join the senior service, as they called it then, they had a staff housing loan scheme just for civil servants. There was no general mortgage system that everyone could draw upon. Now, on attaining independence, what our founding fathers ought to have done was to dismantle that structure of the elite living in the GRA, in big houses, disconnected from the rest, and with the government paying for their houses. In the entire United Kingdom today, only 2 government officials have government housing. The Prime Minister in number 10 and the Chancellor of the Exchequer in number 12, Downing Street. Every other minister, every other legislator gets a mortgage and buys his house or rents his flat. That is what they have in England. That is what they have had for the past 200 years. Yet in Nigeria, they had a different system. And our founding fathers did not deem it fit to dismantle that system. They just replaced the white people. So what does that mean for you and me? What it means is that till today, Nigeria has no mortgage system. Until today, you cannot own your own house unless you can pay cash. We tried to do something like that in Abuja. We did a pilot when we sold federal government houses. And the reason why we sold 30,000 federal government houses in Abuja was actually to force Nigeria to have a mortgage system. Because we felt that if the elites don't have easy housing, they will sit and come up with a mortgage system that everyone else will benefit from. That was the idea. Of course, it was a pilot. After we left, it was dismantled, and here we are. So we did not build a nation, and I just gave you the mortgage system as one example. Our founding fathers maintained the regions, maintained the divisions, because it benefited them politically. I know it is not politically correct to say that Ahmadu Bello, Azikiwe, and Awolowo did something wrong, but they did. They did not work hard enough to build a nation. They maintained what they found and benefited politically from it. Contrast that example with Tanzania, where Julius Nyerere took a country as diverse as Nigeria and wielded it into a nation. You would never meet a Tanzanian who would tell you, I'm from this part of Tanzania. He would say, I'm Tanzanian. Okay? They all speak Kiswahili. Even if they have their little languages, they have suppressed that and elevated Swahili. We didn't do that in Nigeria. So we didn't build a nation. Instead, we built an entitlement culture. I'm a Nigerian, I deserve this. Have you earned it? No, I deserve it. And this entitlement culture just got worse. In my lifetime, I've seen it escalate. And it is a problem. Unfortunately for you young people, it is your inheritance. It may be our mistakes and the mistakes of our fathers, but it is your inheritance. So what are you going to do about it? How do we build a nation out of the current situation we have of division? And if you want to see how divided Nigeria is, please visit my Facebook page. If I post good morning on my Facebook page, all those named Audu, Musa, Mohammed will say, excellent statement, very profound, good morning. And all those named Chidi, Chuku, Olu will say, stupid man, Boko Haram. Okay? So, and 85% of the demographic that follows me is aged between 18 and 34. 85%. It is you that think and speak like that. So we have a problem. And unless we build a nation out of what we now have, we are not likely to make much progress. That is one mistake that we have made that has taken us to where we are. Second mistake is a toxic political culture. I've been spending a lot of time with politicians in the last few years. I'm waiting for Obi to join me. Okay? But I believe, and if any of you has read my book, you will see this confession that I made very clearly. One of our biggest mistakes in government was not taking politics seriously. Politics is important. Politics trumps everything. Politics is more important than anything you can think of. Because if you ignore politics, you do so at your peril. And this is why, after my exile, I decided that I was an accidental public servant, but I'm going to be a deliberate and intentional politician. So I've been spending time with politicians. And I have found that the biggest problem we have in our country, other than the leadership crisis and the failures I've mentioned, is the nature of our politics. We have a politics of private interest. We have no politics of public interest or public good. And you know, the politicians proudly tell you that politics is about interest. If they don't get what they want, they are ready to collapse the system. Every military coup in Nigeria's history was engineered by civilians that have lost elections, rightly or wrongly. If a politician contests for a position and he doesn't get it, he will not support a party member that got the nomination. He will rather move to the opposition and ensure that the person that defeated him, fair and square, loses the election. So we have a political culture where the primacy of personal interest trumps everything else. Now, what is the difference between human beings and animals? Human beings can come together and compromise to live in peace, to make progress. Animals, at least some of them, not all, some animals are even organized enough to do what human beings do. But most animals don't have the sense that if we come together, we will be more successful. With animals, it's everyone for himself. So it is with most Nigerian politicians. Everyone for himself. No one for the country. No one even for the party. It's an interesting political culture, and it's ingrained. Politicians believe that is the way, that is politics. And to change it will take quite an effort. Something has happened in the political landscape in the last 1 year. This merger of 3 opposition parties. It's unprecedented. It has never happened. It only happened because the 3 leaders of the parties, that is General Buhari, Asiwaju Bola Tinubu, and Dr. Ogbonnaya Onu, decided that we must put aside our own personal interests, our personal aspirations, our personal ambitions to save the country. Because if we don't save it, PDP will take each one of us one by one and kill us. Standing alone, the PDP will get all of them. But together, perhaps, they stand a fighting chance. Okay? This is the only reason why the merger took place. Because for the first time, the leaders of the parties decided that public interest is more important than private interests. Now, I hope, and I'm a member of that party, I'm an official of that party, I hope that that attitude will be sustained as we go forward into the future. But this is a problem, and until we fix our politics, we'll continue to throw up the wrong leaders, we'll continue to sustain a system that serves the elite few to the detriment of the many. And one day, everything will end. Because this system that excludes, that pauperizes the majority, is not sustainable. One day, the large majority of the poor and the hungry will kill all of us, the minority that are not poor and that eat well. Which brings me to the next problem. We have built our economics around one commodity called oil. We have moved from a country that is fairly economically diversified into a country that depends on oil. And we live in a federation where only one state is viable, really, Lagos. And Lagos is viable not because of its efforts, but because of history. It was the federal capital. It is the commercial capital. So they have the tax base to tax and be viable. Apart from Lagos, no state in the federation can pay the cost, the running cost of its government without a monthly check from Abuja. 2 other states can pay salaries. Kano, for the same reasons like Lagos, big history, some industrial base, and Kaduna, because one former governor sacked half of the civil servants, a military governor. Apart from these 3 states, no other state in Nigeria can pay the salaries, just the salaries, forget the overheads, just the salaries of its own staff. So we have, and again, it's a continuation of the entitlement culture. And finally, we have a federation that has no federalism. Okay? When you have a country like Nigeria with over 500 different ethnic groups, the only system of government that can work is a federation that allows each community or each grouping to develop at its own pace and to design a system of administration that is unique to that community. One size fits all does not work in a country like Nigeria that is so diverse. We were a federation until the military coup of 1966. Since then, we have tended towards centralization. And that has still not left us. Okay? The federal government is too powerful. The states are too weak. And the local governments are almost non-existent because they have been destroyed by the state governments. Now, for us to try to get back on track, we have to try to be a true federation. And that has some serious implications on the entitlement culture, on the way we do things, and on our politics. Now, I have told you the problems. I will now quickly try to propose some solutions, which is what I think is a medium-term roadmap for realizing the Nigeria of our dreams. And I hope that will happen in my lifetime. That means in the next 20 years, because we don't live long in my family. Now, how are nations built? Let me, as we celebrate Nigeria's 100 years, remind you of 3 realities about nation building. The first, that most nations are artificial. Okay, so those that are saying that the amalgamation of Nigeria was some white people did it, were not, are talking crap. Most countries were artificially created. There are very few countries. Even United Kingdom is an artificial creation. Scotland, Wales, England, they have histories of killing and fighting each other. Okay? So our amalgamation by whoever, by whatever, in my view, in my opinion, is an act of God. God meant us to be together. If you look at the population density of the African continent, you will know that Nigeria is God's creation. It was not Lugat's creation. In one little corner of Africa, God decided to put all these energetic people and put so much of the continent's resources. Nigeria has every mineral. Obi will tell you, she was mining minister. and she did a lot to try to make solid minerals come up. We have everything, and it's not an accident. I don't believe it is. And if you want to check, go and look at history. Most nations, 90% of all the nations you see on this planet were artificially created in much the same way as Nigeria was amalgamated. Okay, so that's one reality. The second reality is this. Some of the most homogeneous countries have turned out to fail more easily than some of the heterogeneous countries. The biggest example of state failure in world history is Somalia. Somalis all speak the same language, and they are almost all entirely Muslims. The country has not had a government for, 30 years? They are trying to get a barely functioning government now. But they all speak the same language and of the same religion. So clearly, having the same language and religion is not a panacea for unity. And some of the most diverse countries in terms of religion, culture, and everything, like United States of America, another artificial creation, by the way, is today one of the greatest countries on the planet. Okay? So please don't tell me that because we have Hausa, Igbo, Yoruba, Igbira, and so on, we should not be one country. Don't tell me that. Okay? And recently, there has been an attempt to separate a country into two, Sudan. We have Southern Sudan, right? What is happening in South Sudan? The reality is this. We have a choice to live and work together. It is not your religion, it is not your ethnic group, it is not the language you speak that matters. It is a choice you make to give everyone his rights and to be fair and just to your neighbor. If you can adopt that principle, which is in all the scriptures, both Islamic, Jewish, and Christian scriptures, if we adopt that instead of praying all the time, but not pray, practice it, Nigeria and the whole world will have peace. So the third reality is that it is a matter of choice. We must choose to be together. We must choose to be in peace with one another. We must choose to live with justice, fairness, and equity to one another. It's our choice. It is not by virtue of one's religion or ethnicity or anything like that. We must decide we want to build a nation. We must accept that God created Nigeria to be the beacon of hope for all black people. Otherwise, why are we so many in this part of the country? Look at Niger. Niger is several times the size of Nigeria in terms of land area. What is their population? They are the size of my extended family. Okay? And when people talk about South Africa as representing Africa, South Africa is not Africa. You go to South Africa, you know that South Africa was built by white people. Jacob Zuma is just on holiday. Okay? It is Nigeria that can be a truly black nation. It is Nigeria that can show that black people can get it right. It is a responsibility God has placed on this country. And if we don't discharge it, the first question God will ask you when you go to heaven is not whether you're a Muslim or Christian, but why did you fail black people? And then they will start beating you up. So, what should we do? We need to fix our politics. And this is why Obi must join me in politics. That is why you must all consider a career in politics and public service seriously. Because if good people are not in politics, James Ibori will be in politics. Okay? That is one. And when you go into politics, let us have the politics of public interest. Okay? Secondly, and then I will sit down, Our economics should be driven by equal concern for all. Because no matter how rich you are, and Chidi has drawn it graphically for you, if your neighbor is hungry and you have eaten well, you can't sleep with your two eyes closed. So when the Western nations establish a social security system such that those that don't have a job can go and collect a monthly allowance to eat, or you have food stamps in the US, they didn't do it out of the goodness of their heart. They did it because those that have want to sleep well at night. Because if those that do not have do not eat, they will not sleep. And Nigeria is a graphic example of that. Because these guys take all this money and buy these 255 million naira bulletproof cars, and they can't drive them safely. They can't. They are scared. There are parts of this country that people don't go as regularly as they used to. And Jerry knows what I'm talking about. Because of kidnapping. I was talking to my son a few days ago. He's just graduated from Georgetown. And I said, where are you going to do your service? He said, well, I have the choice. I think I'll do it in Abuja. I said, why do you want to do that? Do it in Abuja? He said, well, you know, I will stay at home, rent free. He said, that's not the road less traveled. Have you considered going to Ekiti or Imo State? I served in Abeokuta, Ogun State. I enjoyed 12 months of national service, and I learned a lot. Why? What are you going to benefit staying in Abuja? It's a lazy way out. I'm very pleased to say that my son told me this morning that he has decided that he will go to either Ekiti or Osun or Imo State, which is good. Okay? Or where? Ogun? Borno? Well, I didn't suggest Borno to him because I don't think he will learn much from Borno. Everyone in Borno speaks Hausa and goes to mosque. I wanted him to go somewhere different where he will learn something. I'm sure he will consider Borno as well. I'll suggest that to him. Now, thirdly, you know, when I was young, and I'm sure you've heard this story, if you come back home with a new pair of shoes, your parents will ask you where you got them from. And if you say that Uncle Jerry bought them for me, they will take you with the shoes to Uncle Jerry to confirm and then thank him. I give you this story because we used to have certain norms in our society, certain conduct that is acceptable or not acceptable, and you don't even think about it. You don't think about those things. They are just part of your DNA. I see that we have lost a lot of that today because we have become a society of anything goes. Most people have realized that they can get away with anything. And because they can get away with anything, they do anything. Now, unless we try to re-establish those norms, because you see, no amount of law enforcement can catch every criminal and crime. You must have certain norms in the society such that certain things are not even done. Because your 420,000 policemen cannot cope if everyone is engaged in criminal activity. On my way here, I saw people driving against traffic and all that. Nobody can cope. No. I mean, how many policemen and road traffic officers can you deploy to stop that kind of thing? We must decide in our homes, in our churches, in our mosques, that we should not behave that way. Only animals behave that way. And my challenge to you as young people is to be the beacon of those new standards. There is something that has gone wrong in the upbringing of our young people, that these norms are not imbibed in them from childhood, I guess. Or maybe they are, but when they get exposed to society, they see that those things don't work. What works is impunity, is to be bold, to do what is wrong and continue insisting that you're right. It's called Nigerian boldface. But no society makes progress when you have that kind of misconduct as a norm. And finally, law enforcement. The biggest problem in Nigeria, in my view, today is the absence of law. Not in the statute books, we have enough laws, but no one cares to enforce the law. Unless if you're seen as a threat to the state. If you're seen as a threat to the leadership, yeah, the law comes after you. Other than that, there is no law enforcement. And until we find a way to recover that, I do not think we'll get to where we are, where we need to be. So, to conclude, and Chidi has told you that you are leaders. To have a university degree is preparation for leadership in this country. You need to have in our mindsets as leaders 6 things. First, we need a stable country. Nothing is possible without stability. Those that are threatening war do not know what is war. I was in primary school when we had the Civil War. And I know how many times we had to run out of class and jump into a ditch whenever we hear aircraft flying, because my school was next to an army facility. People don't know what is war until they experience it. And there are people in this country that are still fighting a war that has ended since January 1970. And those of you that were born well after the war are being drawn into this. Trust me, you don't want to experience a war. You just want to hear about it in someone else's country. We need a peaceful and stable country, and we can only do so by being fair and just to everyone. Number 2, we need to have trusting and tolerant societies all over. We must learn to live with one another. Every human being is God's creation, and he has a purpose for being here. Whether he worships the way you do or not, or doesn't even worship at all, or doesn't even believe in God, God has not struck him dead. Don't do God's work for him. He's not sleeping. God has not told anyone to kill anyone for him. If God wants to kill a person, he knows how to do it. He doesn't need Boko Haram or anybody to do it. We need to learn to trust each other and be tolerant of one another. We need to contribute in whatever we can to the establishment of rule of law in our country. We need to prioritize investment in human beings. Education, healthcare is the right of every Nigerian. And we have the resources to provide it for every Nigerian. And you must have in your mind that you have a duty to ensure that those 10 million children out of school will not be out of school when you are in charge. We must continue to develop our physical infrastructure. No society makes progress without roads, railways, telecoms, broadband these days, electricity, and so on and so forth. It is something that we must wake up every morning saying, what more can we do to provide more of this for our people? And finally, we must re-establish the importance of merit, hard work, and achievement in our society. Everything in Nigeria has become subject to zoning, federal character, religious balancing, ethnic balancing, and so on. The most important quality, which is the ability to get the job done, is not even mentioned anymore. It is either who you know, or whether you're from the right part of the country, right part of the state. It has become so absurd that even in wards now, local government chairmanship is rotated between one village. What kind of people are we? How can we make progress if we do not pick the best and brightest? If all we have in our country is a sharing system, which is what zoning, federal character, and all that is all about, why do we expect to make progress? Let's keep sharing until there is nothing to share. But it is capable people, it is innovative people that create the cake to be shared. And when you put them down and pick people from a particular ethnic group or a particular religion, you are reducing the size of the pie, and one day it will disappear. So we must have these 6 things in our mindsets if we are to change this country. But we must focus on doing 3 things. Because I have looked at several countries in the last 50 years that have developed. And there are just, about 20 countries in the last 50 years have developed in a dramatic way. China, Malaysia, and such countries. All of them have done 3 things in common. They have developed agriculture. Nigeria spends $1 billion a month importing rice that we have the capacity to produce and export. $1 billion a month. Only 1/3 of our arable land is cultivated. Nigeria can feed this continent. We must find a way to develop agriculture. We must find a way to help our farmers with extension, with finance, with storage facilities, marketing support, price support, so that they are productive. And our farmers employ 2 out of 3 Nigerians. 60% of our people are employed in agriculture. 2, we must manufacture. We must develop our industrial base. And thirdly, we must have a financial infrastructure that supports the real sector, that supports agriculture, mining, manufacturing, and so on. And we must have interest rates that make sense. The interest rates we have don't make sense, and trust me, no matter what the economists tell you, interest rates are politically determined, they are not economically determined. The IMF will tell you that your interest rates must be higher than the rate of inflation, otherwise you have negative interest rates. Nonsense. The rate of inflation in the US is 9% or so. Interest rates are at 1%. We must have politically determined interest rates that enable people to be able to borrow and build their businesses and expand. Borrowing at 25% is not sustainable. No business can thrive when interest rates are 25%. Thank you very much.